Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're located. Welcome to the first edition of our 2025 ZTNA Table Talks. I'm Ixa Gerard, and I'm delighted to have you all join us today in our monthly webinar series, where we delve into the world of Zero Trust Network access. Before we kick off, a couple of things to note. This webinar is being recorded, and you will receive the recording within 24 hours. If you have any questions, please submit them in the Q&A panel, and we will do our best to answer them during this live session. If we can't get to your question today, someone from our team will follow up with you via email. Now let's get started. Today's session is titled Zero Trust Without New Investments, Leveraging Appgate's Risk Engine. We'll dive deep into this topic, offering valuable insights from our cybersecurity expert presenting today, Colby Dice, Director of Product Management. So let's get started. Take it away, Colby.
Thanks, Ixta, and thanks everyone for making time to attend the webinar or watch the replay. Thank you so much. As Ixta mentioned, my name is Colby Dice. I'm Director of Product Management here at Appgate, where I focus primarily on SDP capabilities, and in particular, the features that come from our cloud-delivered services that enhance our existing customers' security profile. So it's my pleasure to present on today's topic and include some live demo, which will showcase Appgate's innovative risk engine service. So we'll show you how that gets started. But let me make sure we're all aligned on the goal. My goal for us today is to illustrate all these opportunities that you have to significantly improve your organization's security posture without having to take additional significant investment or effort. We recognize that organizations have spent a lot of time and money investing in their security tools. And a lot of those tools, of course, were originally adopted perhaps to solve some specific business problem. For example, you might have an endpoint protection tool that you've put in place to ensure that attackers aren't on the device, that the device is free from viruses. You might have device management tools to ensure that the end user's devices are compliant with your policies, that they have the right security patches, that they're running the proper version of software and such. So another investment that customers have already made, of course, is to adopt SDP, Appgate SDP, as their universal ZTNA solution. So these are tools that many of you already have in place, and they're great investments. And what we'd like to do is show you how you can integrate and use those investments with very little effort at all. So I presume that most folks who are on the webinar or attending this webinar today are existing Appgate customers, or that you've learned a little bit about Appgate and you're just trying to dig a little bit deeper. But if this is your first time hearing about Appgate, let me just give you a quick overview. Just consider that Appgate today, it's really the leading solution for direct routed universal ZTNA. Our customers, and there are hundreds and hundreds of customers, they've adopted Appgate in an effort to transition from VPN to zero trust network styles. And our solution is trusted by organizations of all sizes around the globe, nonprofits, government agencies, and in fact, certified by the U.S. Cyber Command, not for many reasons, but not the least of which is because of Appgate SDP's unique ability to cloak infrastructure to make it completely hidden from the internet and from potential attackers, and also to be able to dynamically adjust policies and entitlements on the fly based off of changes in security posture. Appgate is then used inside organizations and provides benefits across multiple parts of the organization. So there may be one team that manages and operates your Appgate SDP environment, but because of its API-centric ability and its out-of-the-box integrations, it's already designed to work with the tools that you already have in place. And so it's used to streamline operational efficiency. So it uses a lot of intelligence and makes smart decisions so you can get more of your end users on a secure footing. So there are a lot more resources about Appgate SDP. and I will point you to some of those resources at the end of the webinar. But this just kind of high level. We're going to turn focus now back to the topic at hand. So I want to start with what is easily the most common scenario that we see today. And it really begins with organizations who were probably trying to solve a remote access problem and had adopted VPN. VPN's been around for ages. And so you have, of course, your VPN solution, like we see here. We've got our end user, and they're able to connect in through their VPN to access some of the applications inside that environment. And you're probably using, probably not LDAP any longer, but some cloud-based SAML OIDC provider. In this case, I'll use Okta as an example. And so the good thing about VPN is it does offer some easy access into some applications, and it can answer real basic questions like who wants the access, and some of these VPN tools will be able to answer the questions about, well, where is the user device located, and is the user in the right group to access the VPN? So real basic, primitive, but it does answer some of those basic questions. And then you'll see that there's some questions that are kind of grayed out here because these are some additional questions you'd like to be able to ask in order to make informed decisions to let users access the specific applications. But VPNs tend not to do that. So what we see is Appgate SDP is being adopted to replace VPN and help organizations move closer to ZTNA style. And with just Appgate SDP and your identity provider. And again, I'm just showing Okta as an example, but it could be any SAML or OIDC provider. With just these two pieces, you're able to answer questions about what device is the end user using? Is that device, is the firewall enabled in that device? Is the disk encrypted? There are a lot of these device claims that Appgate SDP already automatically receives when a user attempts to log in. And you can use this information to decide whether or not this user should even have access to a gateway to access the resources, or whether they should have access to both apps, one app, none of the apps. So it is much smarter in this configuration. But of course, there are other questions you want to be able to ask, and you have the tools to be able to answer these questions today, right? Think about the device management tool, like the most common one is Microsoft Intune, though it could be something like Jamf or Kanji or others. And those, of course, are purpose-built to perform extensive tracking, monitoring of the end user device to ensure that it has the proper installed software, that is properly configured, that it meets your organization's device policies. So that information tends to be locked up inside the MDM. So inside the device management tool. Those tools know all about it, but not yet does the rest of the system. So you still want to be able to answer these questions. Is the device that the end user is using, is it compliant with your policies? Another real common tool, of course, is endpoint protection tools like a SentinelOne or a CrowdStrike or a Carbon Black. So you probably have these kinds of services already deployed, these little agents running on the end user devices already today. And of course, these tools can tell you whether or not there are indicators of compromise on that device, whether that device is under an active threat. So lots of these tools already in place and being managed typically by different parts of the organization. Of course, it depends on the size of your organization, but it's not uncommon to see that there's a team that manages identity, there's a team that manages the ZTNA piece, there's a team that manages just the device management, and another team that manages the endpoint protection tools. So what we see in practice is a lot of these tools are out there. They're able to answer a lot of these important questions that could help you decide whether or not to grant access to your organization's resources, applications, and customer data. But the real challenge as you might imagine, and I'm sure you're experiencing today, is oftentimes these tools are sort of siloed. So the information is there, but it's not immediately available to your ZTNA platform. So this is unfortunate because the tools like MDM, like endpoint protection, they can know that a device is at risk. And if your ZTNA implementation doesn't know this, it may be inadvertently providing access when it shouldn't, therefore adding risk. You have a false sense of security because even though you have the tools that are intended to protect the organization, they're not yet working together. So let me show you a little bit, an example of what I'm talking about here. So switch over to, I have here a little virtual machine. So this will act as my end user who is on their device. You can see that I've got Appgate already installed, and I'm going to log in with this device and just see what kind of policies this user is able to get. Policies and entitlements. And it may well be running slow because I'm running too many things on my little laptop. All right. So I've logged in as the end user, and now the Appgate controller is receiving a bunch of claims, and it's determining for this particular user which entitlements they should be entitled to receive. And then what will appear are the set of shortcuts that represent the different applications that I'm allowed to access. So here you can see that this user who just simply authenticated into the system, they're able to access the expense reporting system, the internal web wiki, or even the SDP admin UI, if this person were an SDP administrator. And let me just show you how that how these entitlements were granted. I'll pick on one. I'll look at the expense reporting application, which is a finance app. So let's go to. Okay, here we can see that the user's logged in, and I'll point to the this entitlement, which this end user was able to receive. You can see that there's the shortcut for the expense reporting, and this entitlement is only granted if the end user device were to meet the maximum security requirements. So let's look at the condition for the maximum security requirements. Again, now this is just showing the simple scenario where you're just getting some, you're using information that's kind of built into the system already today. So for example, I can see something about the operating system that this device is using, and I can see whether or not the firewall is enabled. I could add additional checks to see whether or not the disk is encrypted. So this is a good start. So we know something about who the user is. We know that their device at least met these basic criteria. But on this device, I also happen to be running the Sentinel-1 agent. So I can see in this example, right, I'm running Sentinel-1. So we obviously are trying to protect that device and keep it free from threats. So maybe a really useful thing to do is to then add another condition here to see about whether or not the end user device is running Sentinel-1. So here we have this on-demand claim. This is a simple claim that just checks to see if the Sentinel-1 agent is running. And we'll just go ahead and add that to the set of conditions. And we'll save this. Now, all I've done at this point is make it so that when the user logs in, we'll have to also check that their device is running the Sentinel agent. And I'm going to renew the tokens just to force just to force this check. Since I changed the way the entitlement was configured and the user already has the entitlement, we're going to have to ask them to, in this case, re-authenticate just for my demo. And I may need to shut down my OBS. All right. So as it's logging in, and again, I apologize for the slowness as I seem to be running a lot of stuff on my little laptop here. So as the system logs in, we'll see that this user is not able to get access to the expense reporting system. And that's because I added the wrong piece. Oh, so I did check to see if the agent is running, and I seem to have broken a thing, and which is a great thing about live demos as it happens. So in this case, I am running the agent, and I am reporting inside Sentinel-1 that that the agent is there and it's running. So I'll continue here that you can add this basic check. It's a little out of the box thing that you can do inside the system. But note that that the device is only checking to see if the agent is running. And so the problem that we have here is that the agent itself might be connected to a different S1 Sentinel-1 tenant. It could be that the service itself was spoofed, or just so you can't necessarily be assured that if that service was seen to be running, that it is exactly the right service. So what I had done previously on this on the sample device is I had downloaded a little malware testing file, which was intended to trigger Sentinel-1 to identify that this device is under attack. And so we can see that Sentinel-1 did in fact find the malicious file. And excuse me, hope you're seeing everything. And so it was able to find the malicious file, and it put it off to the side, but Sentinel-1 is still seeing this as an unresolved case. So for this example company's purposes, the device is still not considered fully safe, as the incident has not been fully resolved. So the problem then is that you need to be able to get that information into Appgate SDP. So what we see is that in the environment here, we're not actually getting the specific details from Appgate from Sentinel-1. What we're saying is that that information is still siloed off, and that the end user would be able to get access when perhaps they shouldn't. So what we want to be able to do is eliminate the silos here, and to do this in a way that allows the information from the third-party tools to make that information available to Appgate SDP. So what often keeps an organization from making this kind of transition is the concern, and it's a very real concern, about having to write code or custom scripts to perform an integration with a third party. And then you combine that with the additional cost of continuing to test that and maintain it over the long term. So as maybe you change suppliers, you move from Sentinel-1 to CrowdStrike. Maybe you move out of Microsoft Intune and you move over to Tanium. So making those kinds of switches can be really difficult. Maintaining the code and scripts can be really difficult. So the way to break down the barriers and to be able to get this integration together in like less than 2 minutes would be to use the risk engine. So the risk engine service is a a service that performs the integration on your behalf. It's a really nice, simple click to configure model. You select the third party that you want to integrate with. You tell the risk engine how it should interpret the data that comes from that third party tool, and then it will generate a risk score. Those risk scores, and you can have multiple risk scores, maybe you have multiple tools. You might combine them all together. So you'll combine your endpoint protection tool score along with your MDM score, along with status from the identity provider. You can combine all that in a way to make sure that the system knows, that Appgate SDP knows whether or not to grant access. The risk engine is continuously getting information from third party and then running the analysis to ensure that the risk score for every device is up to date. The way that the whole thing's been implemented, it's designed to operate such that an existing customer with an Appgate SDP environment can easily connect their collective to the service and begin to get the risk scores. Since those risk scores are pre-calculated and cached, they're immediately, nearly instantaneously available to Appgate SDP when your end user logs in or when you do the token renewal. So I'll show you a little bit about how this works first in diagram form. So we begin where you have your existing Appgate SDP environment, much like you do here already on the right. And for a collective that is connected to the Appgate Zero Trust platform, our secure cloud environment, that means that your collective can now use this service. This risk engine service you configured by defining a risk rule, telling it which vendor you want to integrate with. Again, in this example, we're just using Sentinel-1. And we can see that the adapter, these are adapters that we've built, we maintain, we make sure that they are secure and performant and that they don't run afoul of the third party's API restrictions. You know, you don't want to hit API limits on your third party. So the system already knows how to talk to the third party, get the data, run the analysis, and it's going to continue to do this, well, forever, always generating the risk scores. And the risk scores are stored, cached in this inside the risk rule right here. So the way that you get it is when an end user logs in using the Appgate client, that client is going to connect to the controller. The user will be authenticated, and the controller receives device claims and user claims, a lot of information about the context for this user and their device. As a connected collective, the controller is also now able to receive the risk score. So it can, in this case, get security posture information from Sentinel-1. It can get the compliance information from, compliance status from Microsoft Intune, for example. And these come back as claims. These risk scores come back as claims that you can then use inside the entitlements, your conditions, or conditions for your policies as well. So now the controller has user claims, device claims, and these risk scores. It calculates what information or what entitlements the user is supposed to receive, and then it sends it back down to the device. And then the end user is able to access the gateway, and based off their entitlements, they get access to whichever apps they were allowed to have access to. So in my case, what we'd like to see is that the end user will not have access to the finance app. So I'll show you first how we build the risk rule. It's really very simple. And then I'll show you how you use that risk rule in the condition for an entitlement. So here, this is the risk engine interface. And kind of like a cooking show, I'll show you by starting with, let's say we're going to build a S1 risk rule. And I can give it a name and I can give it a description. And then I'll choose from the available adapters. And so in this case, Sentinel-1. And if I were going to try and connect this all together right now, I'd plug in the client secret, which is a code that you get from the Sentinel-1 admin interface, and the URL for how to communicate to my Sentinel-1 tenant. Now, I've already built this, so instead of just clicking next, I'll just, like a cookie show, go over and show you the one that was already in the oven. So here's a Sentinel-1 risk score. So same process. I gave it a name, description, and the connection info, and now I have a risk rule. And you'll see in this risk rule, each rule is designed to help you map from the third-party data to a risk score. In the case of Sentinel-1, we have two vectors. We get the information about the confidence level, which is the automated confidence level that comes from Sentinel-1's built-in analysis, and the analyst verdict, which may have been automated, but could also have been a security analyst who assigns a verdict to a particular detection or event. So as you can see here, we're saying that the mapping is such that if we find any malicious content on a user device, any malicious detections, they'll be considered high risk unless a security analyst has deemed it as a false positive. And we can go on, same thing down here. If the Sentinel-1 had identify the resource, the potential threat as suspicious, and the security analyst isn't sure, so it's undefined, or they also believe it's suspicious, then we consider that be a high risk. And then, of course, with medium risk, if it's a true positive and it seems suspicious. So it's this combination of data that's already available in Sentinel-1. So as an SDP administrator, you can determine how you want to map those values into a risk score. So this would be the default mapping. You can always change the mapping for the risk rule. So if you wanted to say that something is, maybe these should all be high. Maybe you want to really limit the opportunity for anything to kind of get through. So I could mark all of these as high risk, and then there's just low risk only in this column. So at this point, now the risk engine's gone in to recalculate all the scores and has that new information. So this happens, this kind of experience happens for all the adapters. I'll show you another one. There's a OS checker. This is used to determine whether or not the device is on a current operating system. Of course, you may already be using a device management tool that could have told you this in significant detail. So you might instead have an integration with like Intune. Maybe you're not using Sentinel-1, you're using something like CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike ZTA returns trust scores. So we just have to convert the trust score to a risk score. So just wanted to show you some examples of the kind of other integrations that we have, as well as the different kind of mapping. As you can see, you can modify all the risk mappings to suit whatever your particular needs or requirements are. So I showed quickly how you can build a new risk rule. Right? I click Add New, I select my vendor, I define my mapping, and I'm good. So that happens in roughly 10 seconds. The next step is then the next step is then to use the risk rule inside of Appgate SDP. So let's go back to this condition, and I'll add to it now a check that there's this risk rule, and I want to make sure that the Sentinel-1 risk score comes back as low. And I could save it. And that was it. I created a risk rule. Maybe I modified the mapping, and then I add the risk rule as a condition in my entitlement, or I could add it as a condition to my policy. And you see that it took no code to do that, no scripts, no other changes. And in fact, there were no changes to the end user environment. So the end users didn't have to install anything new. You've already deployed the MDM agent, the endpoint agent, the Appgate client. So all the infrastructure is already there. What this is able to do is then pull context from these services to make Appgate SDP even smarter about the dynamic risk rules. Also, the speed with which the risk engine responds is blazingly fast. It's not perceptible to end users. So we've got this in hundreds of thousands of end users who are running this on any part of the day, and there's been no impact to them. So it's really aimed at making sure that you have, as an SDP administrator, the ability to get to that security context and to do so without having to harm the end user's experience. As we know, nobody wants to get more tickets from the end users. Okay, so I put that in. I should have shown you also that I mentioned that the risk scores come back as claims. Here you can see I'm looking at an active session. This is the virtual machine demo that where I logged in, and you can see that there's the risk score here, and that Sentinel-1, based off the data that we got from Sentinel-1, we understand that this device is still considered at risk, and so it's a high level of risk. The risk scores behind the scenes, it's 1, 2, and 3, 3 being the highest level. For the eagle-eyed, if you notice here, there was a CrowdStrike risk rule. I'm not running CrowdStrike on this virtual machine, so we're not going to get a CrowdStrike score. This was here for other demos where we are going to show CrowdStrike, and in fact, we've got plenty of videos on our website that show exactly that. But this is helpful because I just want to point out that if we do get the Sentinel-1 identity, and we do check with Sentinel-1 to see if the machine is at risk, remember I said that a device might be registered with a different Sentinel-1 tenant. So in a case like that, you'll see something like this, that we were unable to find that tenant. We were unable to find that device with that Sentinel-1 tenant. And so this device would be considered high risk because we can't know whether or not the third party knew something about that device. All right, so real nice and straightforward stuff from the demo. Let me go over here. So I spent the bulk of the time talking about the risk engine because, of course, the risk engine is the piece that helps organizations really leverage the existing environments without having to make a significant investment of time, resources. So it's just one of several services that are available in the Zero Trust platform inside our secure cloud environment. And so you see the names of those services here. There are services here that are aimed at helping you automatically discover the applications that end users are using. So maybe if you started with a VPN style configuration, a broad access rule, and you want to begin a microsegment, say give only specific users access to only specific applications, rather than having to manually figure all that out, the application discovery service is able to help accelerate that. We have additional services that are coming out, like the policy advisor will be coming out later this year, Q2 of this year. There'll be a beta. That'll help really reduce the manual effort of maintaining and managing your operating your environment, like helping you get rid of policies that aren't used any longer, collapsing together multiple entitlements that seem to be overlapping. And then other services that generally aimed at improving the end user's experience and their adoption, and giving you additional guidance, like the SDP Health Check service, giving you guidance as to maybe some improvements on how to configure the environment to ensure that it's stable, secure, and remains performant. So there are a lot of services that are already available in the Zero Trust platform. I'd encourage you to go and learn more about those. Thanks for spending time today talking about the Risk Engine service. So I think with that, I will turn over to the Q&A section. And as my friend and colleague Ixta mentioned, if you have any questions, please go ahead and post them into the Q&A widget.
Thank you, Colby. We do have a question from Ezer. Does that mean my endpoint Appgate software does not interact with Sentinel-1 client software on my local machine? Is that correct?
You can absolutely have your Sentinel-1, have Appgate client communicate directly with the Sentinel-1 agent. We've done that before for Sentinel-1 and CrowdStrike and others. The challenge, of course, is that you're relying on what's on that local device, and there's greater security in getting the information from the third party. That way, the system itself's not being spoofed. So that's the primary thing. So you could build an integration yourself to try and get some of that information from the client. I'm not sure about the fidelity. Also recall that you will be writing that code and maintaining it. Now, there are some basic checks already in Appgate. So there's a check to confirm that we were able to receive the unique identifier. So Sentinel-1, Intune, Jamf, CrowdStrike, all of them, they put onto the device a unique identifier so that they know what machine they're looking at. Our Appgate clients automatically receive or retrieve that information. So you'll see a claim for the Sentinel-1 ID. You'll see a claim for the CrowdStrike ID or Microsoft Intune ID. These are claims that exist in the system today. That would at least tell you that the system believes that that software was installed. It doesn't tell you if it's running. For that, you just need to do a process check. That's pretty straightforward. But again, you know the software, you believe the software is installed, you believe it's running, doesn't really tell you what the security posture is according to that third party.
Thank you, Colby. There's another question that came in from William. Do you integrate with Ping Identity Ping 1?
So it depends on how we want to describe integration. So Appgate SDP integrates with all SAML and OIDC providers. So yes, Ping, and yes, all of them. So that's just for the authentication. And so absolutely that works exactly as you might expect. So an end user could log in, like in my example, I was showing you Okta, but it could have been Ping. It could be, I keep wanting to say Microsoft Entra. Could be any of them. And if you're running Appgate SDP in your own environment and you still have legacy LDAP, it also works with legacy LDAP.
Thank you, Colby. What adapters do you support today?
Right. So today we have the CrowdStrike Falcon Insight. And that one looks at detections on the devices. It looks a lot similar to Sentinel-1. Then there's the CrowdStrike Falcon ZTA. That's the one that where Falcon ZTA generates a trust score. We convert that to a risk score. We have Microsoft Intune. This is checking to see if Microsoft is aware of the device, whether or not it believes the device is compliant with your security policy, for example. And there's a Trellix Envision, and of course the Sentinel-1 adapter. There are additional adapters coming. We in fact have about 40 or so adapters that are part of our roadmap. So things like Jamf, that's one of the ones that's coming pretty soon. There's a Microsoft Defender adapter that's also coming. So we'll continue to roll these out. As we roll out more adapters, each new adapter, because it's delivered as a cloud service, each new adapter becomes instantly available to customers who've connected to the service. So as we roll out new ones, as we enhance them, all those enhancements come to you automatically. And as long as you're running Appgate 6.2 and above, and I think 6.2 is right at the end of the on the line there, but if you're running 6.2 and above, these things just work right out of the box.
Wonderful, thank you. One more question came in. Are custom adapters supported?
It comes up a lot. So custom adapters are not supported, at least typically the way folks, when I get that question, the question usually means, could you write an adapter and have it run as part of the risk engine service? And the answer is no. The cloud environment, our secure cloud environment, is designed to be really encapsulated and free from potential threats. So we don't allow any other software to be running out there, something that we didn't already write, test, pen tests, triple secure. Although if you are thinking about writing an adapter, at that point, you're probably more focused on doing some API level stuff. You would end up writing a custom device claim. So it's still an option if you want to write your own adapter. It just would have to be as a device claim, not as a risk engine rule.
Thank you, Colby. We have another question that came in here. Let me read it. Posture check can identify whether an endpoint has a specific Microsoft patch installed and block the enter. If not, or another criteria as a harmful software installed.
So I believe the question is along the lines of you're using a device management tool, Intune, Jamf, or something like that. And those tools can tell you whether or not the device, the end user device, has the appropriate software, if it's been appropriately patched, or if there's perhaps some security, known security issue. Appgate isn't intending to try and replace those capabilities. That's what device management tools do, and we wanted to tap into those strengths. So if you're using a device management tool like Intune, and as part of your policy, you say the end user device has to have specific software at a specific patch level and no known threats, then that's great. That's what that device management tool should do. And it should be able to report back whether or not the device is compliant with your policy. If the device is not compliant with the policy from your device management tool, then the risk engine will interpret that as the device is risky and will report the appropriate risk score back to Appgate. So just to kind of circle back now, for each of the specific scenarios in a device management policy, for each of those, it's up to the device management tool to figure out what the risk level should be, or how it wants to report back. Is the device compliant or not? And we're just going to take that status and generate the risk score. And if I misunderstood the question, please go ahead and ask perhaps a different way. I'd be happy to help.
Thank you, Colby. What is the impact to the user's login experience?
Right. Keeping in mind that in my example today, I'm running way too many things on my little M1. So the end user experience is negligible. I've said this before, and it definitely shows up. We see this with customers. They'll adopt the risk engine, and their end users never even noticed that there was a change. And we're working with environments where there's over 250,000 devices in a specific within one customer environment. So a lot of data frequently getting updated, and still no noticeable impact from an end user standpoint.
Thanks. I think we have a little time for a couple of questions. How do you tell users what the specific risk condition was?
Right. So that one's, you got to be careful. So within Appgate, you can tell, you can configure the environment to tell the user something. So for example, I'll say, if the device doesn't meet all these criteria, we can display a message saying, hey, your device is considered risky. So we're not going to give you all the resources that maybe you were expecting. That may be enough. It really does depend on your use case and how you guys deem risk. So I might not want to put in this message, you're not getting access because you didn't upgrade to a specific version of our operating system, or you didn't get access because SentinelOne believes the device has been compromised. So there's got to be some balance between informing the user that they don't have access, maybe a little bit why, but not so much that a potential attacker who may have taken over that device may have compromised the user's credentials. You don't want to give them more information that would allow them to be more successful in their attack. So it really does depend. Just a good thing to point out that this capability of notifying an end user, like with this message, or requiring a user to provide a reason why they should still get access, even under risky conditions, or requiring a user to re-authenticate or to use some step-up authentication. All of these options, they're part of Appgate SDP. That's just a capability that's there. And so how you, the problems that you're trying to address for the user experience, Appgate's got a lot of different ways to help you do that.
Thank you, Colby. Another question that came in, what are the requirements for using the risk engine?
Right. So the minimum requirement for the risk engine is that you have an Appgate collective, an Appgate SDP collective that is connected to the cloud environment, our secure cloud environment. Either you're running the controllers in your environment and you're connecting in, or we're hosting the controllers for you and your controllers are connecting to these services. So you have to have Appgate SDP in somehow connected to our cloud environment. And you have to be at least on Appgate SDP 6.2. We're further along than that, but it doesn't mean by having such a wide range, it allows customers who've been with us for a while and maybe haven't upgraded too recently, it allows them to go ahead and use these services. Yeah, otherwise pretty straightforward.
Thank you, Colby. I think those are all the questions that we have.
Well, let me thank everybody again and offer, as I promised at the very beginning, here's some information or links off to information that you may find useful to work with the risk engine, to try it yourself. You could simply ask your customer success manager to help you get connected if you're not already. If you need help, you are connected, maybe you still have some additional questions, your customer success manager will gladly set up a short call. We'd love to help you work out any of your questions and help you begin using this integration service. If you are not yet an Appgate customer and you want to try these things out, we do have a free trial. You can go to our website. There's a big old free trial button. Click that and sign up. And then if you're just looking to get more information, maybe you want videos, maybe you want some long form documents, we've got a lot of that stuff out in our demo hub. There are lots of videos that'll show things like the CrowdStrike integration or using CrowdStrike and the OS checker. So multiple risk rules together. So, excuse me. And all of those were pre-recorded, so you won't have the slowness like I had today. But they're really handy videos. All right. Okay. Well, we'll leave it at that. And thanks again for all the time and the attention today. Really appreciate it. Ixta, back to you.
Thank you, Colby. And I shared the links also in the chat to the resources that Colby was mentioning. And thank you, Colby, for this very insightful session. And to our audience, thank you for being part of today's ZTNA Table Talk. As a friendly reminder, the recording of today's session will be shared with you tomorrow. We highly value your feedback, so please take a moment to complete the short survey at the end of this webinar. Your input is instrumental in shaping the future of our ZTNA Table Talks. Thank you once again for joining us and have a wonderful day.